looks like it's 3:30, looking at the clock. So this is our last presentation coming up here. And let's see, I believe we've got Gordon Chu. I'm not sure if he's online yet.
Yep.
Yeah, then we've got Susan Schaffer.
Mhm.
They're both here?
Yes.
All right, well, excellent. I'm not sure. I'll maybe ask Gordon. I thought we were gonna have a third one, but I think Sterling Chu, he's a busy man, and it sounds like he wasn't able to make it work today. So I think we're gonna go with what we've got, which is great. We've got Gordon and we've got Susan. And I'll let them introduce themselves and here in a moment. And there's a questions we're gonna present to the panel here, and I thought we just open it up to each of them to address these questions, and then provide plenty of time for questions, because you know some of the questions that folks had for this last presentation, maybe Gordon possibly could address some of those as well with his operation. So I'd like to welcome both Susan and Gordon, and the questions we were going to present with them, and then they can kind of take it from there, is what is their current operation and what's working for them? The second question would be what challenges they're facing, if any. I'm sure there's probably some, and then where they see their operation in the next 5 years. And so again, what's your current operation, kind of what's working for you? What are the challenges you're facing, and where you see yourself in the next 5 years? And if you have other things you'd like to address as part of your discussion, that's fine. And I'm sure the audience may have some questions for you as well. At least I'm hoping they do. So Susan, I think actually we got Gordon up here first. So maybe we'll start with, I see Gordon there on the camera. So how about we start with you, Gordon? And if Susan, if you have a camera, feel free to bring your things like videos working today. We don't have a cruise ship in town, so it looks like we're doing pretty good with bandwidth. So Susan, if you'd like to bring up your camera, feel free. And then maybe I'll start with Gordon and then hand it over to Susan. And then we'll open it up to the audience for questions. So, Gordon, it's all yours. If you need to repeat, let me know.
Yeah, Teneke Logging Company, we're halfway between Sitka and Juneau, basically. So we have plenty of challenges, especially with freight and logistics. The questions you asked, the current operation, we have 2 small lumber mills, a 74 Kenworth log truck with a self-loader, and we shovel yard, basically extracting trees from the timber sales by laying down puncheons and building skid roads where there used to be skid roads generally. And the Forest Service allows this because the machine would otherwise get stuck in the forest. So we use a short main line off the bucket on the excavator and a bunch of chokers, and we can drag out typically like 3 trees at a time. It's only a 10,000 or 10-ton excavator, not a big machine. So we are transitioning into value added. Sterling my son got a grant for a log boiler. And this is like a container, a jacketed container with water around the big fire. So you can just dump 10-foot logs in there and keep a fire going. And then the water gets pumped through your dry kiln and your warm rooms or any place you need heat. So we're in the process of moving forward with a dry kiln, which will, of course, give us the opportunity to sell more value-added lumber. Our business is very variable. We have a lot of repeat customers, but people contact us for their projects, and then we do all we can to fill those orders. We sell to shipwrights, restoring the aging fishing fleet, and instrument makers in Juneau, home builders, anybody that historically doesn't need stamped lumber. And that's been a real hindrance, because obviously our lumber is not going to be in lumber yards in big units out back if it's not stamped. But of course, we've made some great progress here in Alaska, passing the lumber grading bill, and we're very excited to get certified to grade our own lumber in the future, and hope that opens more markets. And that would speak to the future, the next 5 years. We hope to be expanding operations by selling more lumber, basically. And we also do some shaping. We have a small Woodmaster, and it's painful how slow it is. So I wouldn't consider that really sustainable. But we've been looking at grants for better four-sided shaping and surfacing materials. We generally provide, unless people want nominal sized lumber, we generally provide rough sawn. And I know builders never have done that. I've done it for 25 years here in Tennessee. So I've got a lot of experience, and basically you're getting a lot more for your money, number one. And the wood's going to be considerably larger and stronger. So there's a lot to be said for not skimping on lumber sizing. And it's just a ripoff, basically, to buy 1.5 by 3.5 and call it a 2x4. We have a lot of experience with the young growth now. The first 7 timber sales we've done, by the way, this is since 2008. We've been on a special use site, leasing 2 acres from the U.S. Forest Service Sitka. And the first 7 timber sales were exclusively old growth. That's all that was ever available. And then about 5 years ago, Chris Budke, who I'm sure many of you know and remember, he said to us, the forest is in transition. Do you guys want to try a little bit of young growth? And he said, maybe 20% of your timber sale young growth. And we said, well, no, if the forest is transitioning, we want to be a part of that. So we went on our first timber sale with young growth, we went to 60%. And we're very excited about the timber. Unlike some of the comments people have made or said about the wood, it's incredibly stable, high grade lumber. We have no problems with warping or twisting. If you have a log that's twisted, you can have that problem, but that's basically a cull at a lumber mill, because it can timber bind on your blades or bands if the wood has tension in it. So we've only had good experiences, and I can speak very highly of young growth. And I was good to hear Andrew talk about some of the problems that they've noted, because I'm not aware of that, particularly the bevel siding. And that's one really valuable product for us, because it's a value-added product and there's very little wood in it. So, if you're a business person, you look for stuff like that. So it might be that since he's had some problems with it cracking or twisting, that we should go to a larger dimension on the bevel siding. In other words, thicker bevel siding, not a 1/4 inch at the thin side. There's no reason we couldn't do that. But I'm glad to hear pluses and minuses from other people. All the lumber yards in America, and it's certainly on the West Coast, SPF lumber, spruce, pine, and fir, it's all second or third or fourth growth. So I'm not aware of any finish problem putting finishes on it. Young growth spruce is a very different product than old growth spruce, and most of it is beneficial. For example, it's much lighter. So, aging carpenters like me, I've been a carpenter for 50 years, since I was 16. It's fun. You feel like you're a strong guy when you pick up a piece of spruce. but it's of course remarkably strong, has one of the highest strength to weight ratios of any wood. So the other benefit to the young growth that we've noted is that it air dries incredibly quickly. And we frame with this lumber green. My son, who I'll talk about in a minute, is building all the time, and that's why he's not here. He's out on South Douglas Island out of Juneau, off the grid, building another uninspected building that he specializes in. His buildings are either undersized and don't need a building permit if they're in town, or they're off the grid where no inspection happens. So, but the wood dries just unbelievably quickly. Like, in one day you can feel that the wood is lighter. And if you frame a house like mine, by the time you're done, that wood's all up in the air, breathing and losing moisture. And the way I think about it with young growth, because it's fast growing, is it's like a sponge. It soaks up water, which makes it very non-durable. If you put it outside, it's going to rot faster than old growth. But in your wall, it's remarkable. Like, your house is going to be dry by the time you go to put drywall on it. And I don't have data on that. This is just, because I'm a carpenter and we're flying nails through these boards. And then here's another interesting footnote. When I started out as a carpenter in the early 70s, all house lumber was not kiln dried. And it's like I have to re-educate everybody about this. No, green lumber is great to build with. You got to be careful in some respects, like with big timbers for your headers, but we laminate our headers out of smaller timbers that are dry, or buy a dry timber for your header, or else the drywall might develop some cracks. And that's no big deal. You just mud it up and repaint it. But I don't think I'm going to be successful in re-educating the entire construction industry either. So, but generally, when I talk to people and they're not trying to fit in joist hangers, they would prefer more lumber for the money, because I'm going to sell nominal lumber for the same price as full dimension. Next 5 years, I think that lumber grading bill is going to become a big part of us getting more timber into Valley Lumber and Don Abel Building Supply in Juneau, and maybe even Spenard's in Sitka. As I said, logistics are a big problem when you're milling 90 miles from Sitka or 60 miles from Juneau, but we have one barge that's aged out, and we're building another one right now, 35-foot pontoon barge that'll tow very fast. So we're excited to be able to help with the delivery of these young growth products, and that's going to be part of our future transportation solution. We do everything. We put lumber, like Andrew said, on AML, but 2 or 3 times a year is all we get them anymore. So that's pretty limited. People call me and they well, when can I have my lumber? And I've got a cut list where I'm getting lumber for people that are, this time of year, I get phone calls every day. So it's really busy right now, but I'm working alone also. So this is not, this is a family business. And my son, when he's here, we can crank out a lot more stuff together. But because he's a contractor, he'll fill the barge and tow it to Juneau and then build with it there for a few weeks and bring the barge back. So he's not here working with me all the time. And there's a sort of a labor shortage everywhere, but especially in a town with probably 50 people right now. So I don't really, I think maybe if anybody had questions, that would probably help fill out these questions that you asked me if I missed anything. But I hope that gives you an idea of what we're doing and how we feel about young growth. And I think there's a huge opportunity here, especially in the next 10 years when more of the stands come of age.
All right, well, thanks, Gordon. I think I'll hold off on questions just yet. We'll turn it over to Susan with with Aurora Energy Solutions, let her kind of present in her operation, which is, she's up north in Fairbanks, so we're crossing up north to a totally different part of the state, which is interesting and good. So Susan, I'll turn it over to you, and then we can open it up for questions.
Thanks for the invitation to be able to talk. I started here with Aurora Energy Solutions about 2 years ago. Aurora Energy Solutions actually started about 4 years ago or so, when they acquired Superior Pellet Fuels, which is the pellet mill that we have kind of out by North Pole, where we would make many hundreds of tons of spruce pellets. Right now, we've kind of paused our operation, and we can definitely talk about the challenges there to explain why. So right now, we're just focusing on firewood, and we primarily use birch. I guess I was going to see if I could share my screen real quick to show you. The guys are wrapping up. They stop at 4. Do you guys see here in just a second? I've got a security camera that will show the operation just real quick while they're still using the equipment. Do you guys see kind of like the yard with some equipment and some logs?
Yes, it came up on our screen, so.
Perfect. Okay. Wonderful. I just wanted to, while stuff is still moving and tumbling, you can kind of see on the left, we've got our multi-tech firewood processor. On the right, we've got our Cord King. It's not running right now. We had to replace the valve cover, but lots and lots and lots of logs of birch in the yard. We try to stock up as much as we can here before wind breakup kind of hit and weight restrictions hit, because we won't be able to get logs until June, sometimes July, depending on the season and fires and all kinds of fun stuff. So just wanted to, hopefully you guys can see some stuff. I don't really get to see, it's kind of small what I'm looking at, but you can kind of see our log loader in there grabbing some logs and putting them up on the firewood processor. So just wanted to show that so you can kind of see our little tiny yard and what we try to do to maximize efficiencies in our little lot here. So and then yeah, we specialize in firewood. We've got our kiln that we can run 48 cords of birch at a time and dry. Depends on the seasonality of ambient temperatures and how frozen those logs are. If we're in a 2-day cycle up to almost a 5-day cycle when it's really, really cold out. And we added a second kiln over this last summer. So we have 2 kilns now. That's not sure if the screen sharing changed. Do you guys see a picture? Is it still on the camera?
We see a picture now, yep.
Okay,
So
cool. Yeah,
yep.
So there's just a cute little picture. Kiln number 2 is on the left. It's our new one, and you can see it's loaded up. We put 48 cords in there at a time. Dry our wood to make sure we're below 20%. You can see here we had one of our kilns running. You can see the temperatures, how much warmer one was. I just threw up a few little things real quick to add some flair to my discussion here. So I think that, oh, and then this was during construction. If you guys want to learn a lot about kilns for firewood, we don't really put lumber or anything in ours because we try to force that moisture out so fast that it will kind of twist and not keep your board straight. So we've got the fans inside. We use steam from our power plant across the road, across the river to dry our firewood. And we sell about 5,000 cords a year right now. We should be able to do more now that we've got the second kiln going. So yeah, I'll stop with the pictures and we can talk more about challenges with our, why we're not running our pellet mill. We definitely struggle with having loggers here in the interior that can supply spruce for our pellet mill, birch for our firewood yard, and then our loggers actually supply spruce sawmill to Northland Wood. So we stretch them very thin. And then they also have their own operation where they do firewood, and they have a kiln for lumber, and they do cabin kits as well, but they're down in Dry Creek, which is a few hours away from us. Lovely guys, and we appreciate everything they do, but we could really use some more logging outfits here and then some trucking. Definitely having a hard time competing with the Mancho project and North Slope running. It's really, really hard to find drivers to haul your logs into town right now. So I'll kind of pause and see if there's any questions, or I can go real deep, or you guys let me know.
Well, maybe I'll just open it up to questions then if it sounds like this would be a good opportunity to do that. So in the back, I guess, Matt. I'll bring the mic back that way.
Questions for Aurora. So just from splitting firewood at home, I know it generates a ton of debris, bark and little splinters and whatnot. So I'm just curious, do you guys do any byproduct? But you must generate a massive amount of bark and kindling and whatnot. What do you do with all that?
Yeah, so with the bark, not so much, because it generally is on those birch until they come out of the kiln and then it pops off. But the way our operation is, everything stays contained in that basket and we give you all of that. Some customers may feel that they have excess bark, but it was part of the tree and we give that to them. And there's tons of BTUs, so we really try to encourage everyone to keep that and burn it, especially for fire starting. That stuff just lights up. Like, you have no problem starting our firewood. From the operation with the slash, we do have waste. Traditionally, when we were running the pellet mill, we would debark our spruce and then we would haul our slash out there and grind that up together and make a compressed log product. We have a DePue system that makes more logs. We were having some issues over the years with it performing. We've overhauled it all, but right now, because we're not running the pellet mill, I don't have as much spruce waste. So it's something where we've talked about either purchasing a new machine, a briquetter. We're looking at the Roof brand. We're doing some product testing with that to see what we can do with our waste product. It's just right now we're still kind of in the R&D phase and trying to make sure. We'd have to buy a grinder. We need to make sure that we can dry it effectively. We're hoping to utilize the extra space in having the second kiln to be able to dry that, but we're still kind of running some tests and sending products out and trying to make something with more of that right now, but we don't have it dialed in just yet. We're hoping for next year we can have a product.
Other questions for Gordon or Susan? I'm sure there's gonna be a few more out here somewhere. Yes, right.
Susan, are you planning to get the pellet mill started again, or what's the plan there?
I would love to at some point. Right now, it wasn't economical. That first year when I came on, Chad Schumacher used to run everything, and he was kind of known as the pellet guy, but he moved away, so I kind of took over. And unfortunately, there was a little bit of deferred maintenance out there with the mill itself. We were struggling with our dies and our rollers and producing a good product. One thing that we struggle with up here is that we utilize our local resource of spruce. And we do debark it. The bark has the ash content. We're a premium pellet. You have to be below 1% or below ash, and we're usually around 0.4, 0.5, but it's really hard to compete with Home Depot and the other stores bringing in Douglas fir from down south, because it is a lot less ash. We're higher BTU. We're still really good in that ash content, but we find that some of the customers in our interior here are a little lazy and they don't like to empty that ash tray and they complain about it. So it's hard to compete with that. We weren't able to get enough green logs in the yard to even process and make it worthwhile. We got about a quarter of the logs that we would need to actually start the mill up and run it, because it's usually just a seasonal operation in the summer. Part of that's because we have contracts with GVEA, our electric company, to give us ratchet demand charges and everything there. So we have a short window where we can operate out there. I would like, if we ever really started that pellet mill back up, I would really probably lean more towards an industrial pellet where we don't have such standards of that ash content, because our chipper, literally on the last day, it was a ring debarker chipper. The engine grenaded, and we would need to be looking into a new debarker or chipper system. And those are easily close to $1 million to do what we need to do. And right now, we don't want to put the money into that unless we knew the market existed. Home Depot has been very clear about undercutting us to put us out of business on their pellets. So they lose a lot of money each year just to push us out. So it's unfortunately for our community, that means pellets are going to go up in the next year. But as soon as we start making them again, I'm sure Home Depot will lower their price. But right now, it's just not economical to invest all that and start it up.
Hey, Gordon, this is Matt LeBrez with the Alaska Lumber Grading Program. Want to say, first of all, thank you for your support and interest in the program and your remarks on that. And I just wanted to add a couple comments to say that lumber graded through the program is accepted in both the dry and green condition, and there's provisions around that as far as sizing goes. And there's charts that kind of give indicators on what size to mill to based on the final condition of the product that you intend to grade and sell it in. So just to add a little more information there. And then another point of clarification is that lumber graded through the ALG program can be sold to end users. So that includes a person building a house or their contractor. So sales to commercial lumber yards would not be permitted under the program, just to clarify that part there.
All right, thank you.
One more question.
Oh, and for Gordon, just to mention, if you didn't hear earlier, there's a training, registration is open in Prince of Wales. I don't know if that's convenient for you. And if not, there's in the works, potentially training in Sitka or in Juneau. So I'll try to remember to keep you informed on that. But if Prince of Wales is a possibility for you, that was in July.
Thank you.
This Jeff, you want one more room here? I don't see anything online right now.
Okay. Yeah, thanks. This is Susan for you. You mentioned the possibility of industrial pellet. What would be your end use for that? Would that be a coal fire opportunity with coal or something else?
Well, there is an opportunity where we could do some type of biomass to the power plant right next to me here. That's where we've kind of looked at either the briquetting for that. I think the pellets for the power plant here locally are too small for it to work in their combustion chamber, but we're looking at some of that. We have had interest from some military offices here next to us that are interested in maybe going more biomass. And so they've shown some interest in wanting us to process pellets for them. I think that's still maybe a long-term, maybe that's one of those 5-year things. So we're looking into that, and we would like to be able to offer a pellet. We did have customers that also more commercial customers. We have a bulk truck that we could deliver up to like 15, 16 tons at a time. And we had quite a few customers, maybe a dozen that had bulk silos and had larger boilers that would do that. And it would be nice to keep supplying pellets to some of those customers. Unfortunately, this year was the last year I was able to guarantee that I could offer them pellets with us not processing last summer or this summer. We reserved a certain amount for them just because they were the ones that helped with the company starting about a decade ago, getting some of these systems in place. It just, not economic to keep going right now.
All right, looks like we've got another question in the room here, and if there's anyone online, raise your hand, we'll take questions from you as well.
I guess a question for both of you. Could you explain your challenges with what you have on the sourcing material?
I mean, most of my issues with sourcing material are just the logistics of the loggers not having enough time and the truckers getting it to us. I would say that our dealing with forestry, which is who I always purchase our timber sales with, is all the guys down there are great. We deal with Andrew, Kevin, and Jeremy, and there's a lot of availability for birch because there's not really been like a big time player for birch here in the interior. I am working with them doing a long-term negotiated timber sale that we're hoping to last us the next 10 years. And that's been a really nice thing to work on and get that secure, or working towards that. The challenges for us is just loggers. There's only really one player here, and then the trucking and just the costs have gone up 40% compared to last year. So it's making it pretty difficult to break even at selling our wood at a fair price and compete with fuel oil and other players that are selling green wood. They don't understand the difference between green and kiln dried wood. There's a little bit of a premium you got to pay, but we get a lot of flack for that. So.
And Gordon, any thoughts from you on that question? We can read.
On supply,
Yes. Yeah.
you know, we're pretty small compared to Susan's outfit, and the Forest Service has some inventory ahead of us. I mean, this is all national forest here and no state land. So I've been very lucky to be able to have some NEPA cleared areas ahead of me. And all I have to do is ask for a sale and they'll come select the trees and scale them for the timber sale prospectus. So I don't really have a supply problem. We're not using that much either. But boy, here, you know, we'd love to be able to do something with all our waste besides burn it. We make firewood, but it's mainly just for ourselves and a couple people here in town. But it does seem like doing something with waste is an environmentally sound thing to do.
I will say, oh, sorry.
Nope, go ahead. I was just looking around to see if there was other questions. It looks like we might be getting towards the end of questions.
Yeah, I was gonna point out for us with the supply, the birch is great. Now, if we were to get back into the spruce game and try to make pellets, I do feel like there could be some challenges with that just because a lot of the local sawmills or small operations and then the firewood processors that do sell small compared to what we do, they always focus on the spruce because it does dry faster, you can get more standing dead. That's where there would be a lot more competition. We do the timber auctions, we do over the counter sales. Those for spruce are harder to get, or there would be a lot more competition, which could drive up the cost. And I want to make sure that other people can still be doing what they want to do. So I don't want to go in and hog all of that because we buy so much volume. I really like focusing on the birch. We have done some spruce firewood, but most of that was just because our loggers had cut the spruce to do spruce pellets out at the mill, and we decided not to do that. So we brought some of the spruce in, and there is some market for that, but we really just try to focus on the birch, and there's just so far nobody else really kind of competing with us. So.
I guess I've got one question maybe for you, Gordon. Gross sales mostly spruce, and is that what you're using, or are you cutting hemlock too? And if both, does it matter to you which species, or do you have a preference?
Yellow cedar is our big money maker, but you know, not much of the forest is yellow cedar either. And so we have yellow cedar on the stump right now. And there's more out there, but it's, you know, we're on an old logging road system that's been shortened as they pulled culverts and bridges. So there's not an endless supply of that product. So spruce, we struggled with hemlock for various reasons. It's a very heavy, wet wood, and since we're air drying and selling air dried lumber, or partially air dried, or even green spruce, the hemlock, it never seems to dry without a kiln, at least down here with the old growth that's available. So basically we're cutting old growth spruce, young growth spruce, and cedar, and they usually throw in and mark some alder and mark some hemlock, because if we want to add to the sale at the end, you have to already have some purchased, basically. I don't know why that is, but so we usually just try to get all 4 of those species in a timber sale in case we can have the option to add to the sale.
All righty, I don't see any questions online. Am I missing any? Or any other questions in the room? I think we're good. So. All right, well, I'd like to extend a big thank you to both Gordon and Susan for their.
All right, thank you.
Nice to meet you, Susan.
Yeah, you too. Thank you.
So with that, yes, well, I guess we'll move on then to kind of wrapping things up here. We're a little bit ahead of schedule, which is not a bad thing. It's sunny outside.
There's a point of interest, and I was reminded last night and reminded again, and I'd like Ken to tell us about the Dawn Redwood that's here, and I forgot the whole story.
You know about more about
Do you
that.
know about the Dawn? Because not everybody knows the whole relationship between the Dawn Redwood and the old timers would always talk about it, the old time, SAF stuff.
Sure, I could talk about John Redwood. And Ken could chime in too. You wanna,
I know very little about it, other than the fact that, well,
okay, well,
it's here.
well, I'll tell you about the Don Redwoods and Sitka then briefly, and then you can chime in if I missed something or you have something to add. So I gave a couple folks the VIP tour too, a couple of Don Redwoods the other day on their trip home from the airport. But so over on Japonski Island, we have a Don Redwood that was planted, I believe, in around 1956 or so, and it was grown from seed that was collected from China when they. That there were living Don Redwoods that was thought to be extinct, and in the late 40s, in China, they discovered living trees, and there was an effort to collect seeds from those trees. And if Alan Brackley was here, he did a wonderful synopsis of the whole history of the Don Redwoods, and he'd be the person that should be up here explaining this, but anyway, the tree that's grown over on Japonski Island is one of the seedlings from those original seeds that were collected in China from those living trees that were found. And I believe they sent seedlings, or they sent seeds to all 50 states. And in Alaska, there were seeds sent to other places in Alaska too. But I believe the ones that were planted here and the one that's growing here on Japonski Island is the only living tree in Alaska from those original seed source from those living trees. I'm not sure if there's any in other places in the US. I don't recall. Then in the 80s, we took some cuttings from that parent tree over on Japonski Island and rooted them, and we planted them here in town. And there used to be one right out in front of Centennial Hall here before they redid the building. And we moved it over to it's over by the tennis courts now. We moved it one other time because they were doing something else at Centennial Hall. And Sean McLeod, for those here in Sitka that knew him, they had a tree spade. We moved it once. We thought, okay, we'll move it. And then all of a sudden, when they redesigned Centennial Hall, we discovered, well, we're gonna have to move it again. And so we did, and Sean was involved with that, or maybe Judd Kirkness here in town. But anyway, we moved it over to the other side of the tennis courts, just down the road here. And it's doing great. Hopefully we don't have to move it again. Hopefully that's its final resting place. And there's one just down Lincoln Street across, right by the Pioneer Home. they need to cut the yellow cedar that's next to it because it's crowding out the Don redwood. But, I don't see that happening. We've got a really good groundskeeper at the Pioneer Home and he does a great job. But the Don redwood's kind of grown, taking advantage of the light it can get, and it's kind of, to have a little more light, it would be a nicer tree, but it's still alive and it's growing, it looks good. Then there's the third one that's over by the old Civic Community Hospital. Search Now owns that. And we sent them a letter here about a year ago or so that when they decide what they're gonna do with that building, if they're gonna like tear it down or do something, that tree needs to be moved. So I think I might have to follow up with them here at some point because
Charles Clement just cut it down. So.
because I don't know I never got a response from Search when I sent the letter. I'm not sure who. But anyway, I should follow up because that's the nicest tree we have in town. It's in the corner of the building there where it gets a lot of sun, it's warm, and it's got the best form. About 14 inches in diameter. We measured it here about 3 years ago, TJ and I, and we measure them every 4 or 5 years. That's a very nice tree, and it's got typical form. The one over on Japonski Island it looks like it's been topped because it's rounded, and it hasn't been topped. But for some reason, it doesn't. It's short on the top, and theory is that maybe it has something to do with it being kind of right next to the ocean there, Salt Spring or something, but it's got not typical form for a Don redwood. And then when Robin Mulvey was in town here last year, we were looking at some yellow cedar that I had some seedlings that we sold through SAF to somebody about 10 years ago, and a couple of them had died, and the person came to me and asked me why, and I looked at them and I was like, I'm not sure exactly. So Robin was in town and we went and looked at them, and it's one of the blights I think that she talked about yesterday. But then she looks up the street and she goes, "Is that a Don redwood?" And I went up and looked at it, and sure enough, that is a Don redwood. So there's another one up off of Hannah, Wolf Drive. And the owner of that, I forget where that tree came from, but it is a Don redwood. I think it might have it's been there for quite a while, it's a fairly big tree, so I need to find a little bit more about that tree, but we have some. Yeah.
What's the one by Totem Square by the Forest Service?
That's the pain.
Those were giant sequoia, well, I think one of them got cut.
Yeah.
But those are giant sequoia.
You're missing like the coolest thing about them is that they're like large. They drop their needles.
I wouldn't do that. So they do drop their needles, yes, right now they're just starting to leaf out, yeah.
That blew me away because there are like 2 or 3 in Pennsylvania. Do you know where they are? So I was walking past and they look like yew trees to some extent, I think.
A little bit, yeah.
It looks like a yew tree. I was like, whoa, this is a really big Pacific yew tree. And then all the needles turn red. And I was like, oh my God, what killed this tree right away? And it dropped everything. And I was like, oh, that's such a bummer. And then the needles came back and I was just like, what is going on here? So then I Googled like deciduous conifer and I thought it was only large, but yeah, Don redwood. So
Don redwood, yeah. And now, of course, you can buy them at nurseries, you know, they're easy
Let me
to.
read a couple of the really interesting factors about it. The one here, the one Sitka was planted by Fred Giesling in 1950. And it was one of 165 seedlings that were originally sent to Juneau in 1948 from an arboretum in Massachusetts that got them directly from China in 1948, and the seed or the trees were discovered. They thought they were extinct, but they found a living specimen in 1944. So.
Okay, that's good to know. And if anyone wants to see the kind of history that Alan Brackett put together, I'd be glad to send that out. Maybe I could send it out to the SAF mailing list, but he put together that whole kind of history of that, what Ken just talked about, the whole. It's kind of interesting how they found him in China and the process of getting seed and who, it's an interesting kind of story. I'm not
I
gonna,
have something from Jim Russell. That has an explanation. He has.
yeah, I think we've got that. I've got a whole Don Redwood file. My God.
Yeah, the reason this out was because when I first got here 26 years ago, at the SAF meetings, the folks from Sitka would always talk about this. And we've never been here collectively, so I haven't been. But I always thought it'd be interesting that we don't lose that historical knowledge that we have. And you did a great job channeling your inner Alan. Alan Brackley. It was almost like Alan was here, and I'm sure his ears are ringing. Cook Inlet chapter is, we started a project and we were moving along, and Cook Inlet, we started a project to, we called it the Memorial Foresters Grove. And there would happen to be some project money available in Anchorage that we brainstormed the idea of planting a tree for every deceased SAF forester. And not naming the tree, by the way, because I've done that before, and when the tree dies, it's just this whole thing. But essentially a grove, and then and this would be in a park. And that we would keep a record of all those individuals. And we were talking last night a little bit about, some of the past foresters, and we lost quite a few this past year. We lost Jim LeBoux, help me, the fellow from Southeast. Wayne Nichols.
John Hall.
Mike Martin. So it was 4 right there. John Yari 5. I mean, this was a noted year for some foresters that have been here for a really long time, and not everybody knows, or the younger SAFers don't know who these people are, but we thought it would be interesting to keep, even on our webpage, the names and who they are and something noted about them. And who was it here that would always talk about the Don Redwood? You mentioned the name.
Alan Brackett.
He's still alive. But.
Well, Ron Wolf was another one that passed away years ago. There's actually a yellow cedar planted just over on the way approach to the bridge in memory of Ron Welsh, who started the 5th grade field day that we've been doing here in Sitka for 30 some years. But he was, he passed away, but it's been a decade or more.
Okay. Going on. All right, okay. So one of the things is that was going to do it here, part of our executive committee meeting, but with all of you here, most of you are on the executive committee. Board meeting. I'll send a memo out of that too. When you go back home, I'll send you a reminder at your next chapter meeting, compile a list of some of the past SAF foresters that you can recall, and then we'll talk to some of the older members that aren't here, and see how we can construct lists of folks and what they're noted for. One is John Sandor. There's like John Sandor stories that would fill a book. Yeah, I mean, how he was quite a character and quite an influential person in forestry in the whole U.S. He was the regional forester.
Yeah.
And Sandor, he passed away not that long ago. Yeah, relatively speaking. So anyway, I'm going to task you, and I'm going to remind you to, next time you have a chapter meeting, come up with a list and talk to some of the retirees and the ones, whenever you see them somewhere, and let's see if we can collect a list and then establish a memorial grove, because this came out of John Hall's family. They wanted to know if we would plant a tree in John's memory. And we said, oh, yeah, girl, where do you want us to plant it? I mean, it's kind of but in the next few weeks, they're going to be doing some plantings in Graywood and John's right memory. So anyway, a little task for you to do and go down memory lane. So thank you, Alan, by the way.
Right, so everyone needs to scan this code here before you leave and then save that on your computer and then take a picture, fill out the form and then send it in. But, I'll talk briefly just about the field trip tomorrow and over on the table over there, we do have gifts for the presenters. There'll be a FCA hat and bag, so any presenters, please pick up your. There, Mitch is holding them up.
You want it, yeah.
So, those are for our presenters and I think our online presenters, will be,
Well, Melinda and I will get with them.
yeah, we'll be getting with you as well, so. So let's see here, what else do I need to cover today, other than the field trip? Terry?
Shameless plug, in this room, this Sunday is the board's plan revision meeting. You learn all this about SAF and all that good stuff. I'm gonna flyers with the fancy dancy QR code as well. So if you want to come and talk about what the future looks like and we'd love to get your input. You can still also go online as well. So if you're not able to make this Sunday 1 to 4, don't ask me about the horrible time and opportunity. They're very limited. But you can go online. SES also has a link as well online to get to that. So I'm gonna leave these here with you guys. Thanks, Pat.
And of the banquet tonight, so 5 to 6, across the street, Coldwater Bar and Grill, social hour, 6, whenever we're done, probably 8, somewhere in there, but 6 is dinner, and it's in a separate room, that we've got in the Westmark part of it's outside the restaurant. It's as you go in the front door, the hotel, it's off to the right. We can easily help folks find it if you can't. Gary White, the director of this Economic Development Association, is our featured speaker tonight, so he's gonna be presenting a little bit about the pulp mill when it was here, and now, you know, basically what's transpired with the development of that site since then. And so that should be an interesting presentation from Gary.
I got a logistics question for tomorrow morning. I'm on the northbound at 6. Is anyone flying out going north tomorrow? So we can coordinate. You gotta figure out, right? Which route leaves at 6 in the morning? So
We need to be there about 5.
So you don't need to get out.
If you need a ride, let me know.
Okay. What's that?
Hey, Pat.
Yeah, and I'll cover logistics for the field trip here in just a second.
That's it. Go ahead.
So, for those going on the field trip, we've got a bus lined up, right, Brian? 8 o'clock here, we'll meet the bus, we'll go out to Star Gavin Valley. It's a valley that was logged in the early 70s. TJ is gonna be our tour guide in the morning out there. And we actually, hopefully, there's a deer exposure out there that we put in, Scott Harris with SCS at the time. Brian and I found it the other day. It's a short walk off the road. It's still up. The one in the control and the other one, they're still up. And so if we have time, one's willing, we might take a little jaunt up there.
Take some pictures.
And there is stuff growing in the one, yeah, you can definitely tell the difference. So that's in the morning, and we're gonna shoot me back here in town at 11:45, so folks have an hour to get lunch. The Allen Marine boat, they're gonna leave just over here, just on the far side of Centennial Hall here, but we need to be there promptly at 1. And so we'll have folks back here, hopefully 11:45, time to get lunch, and then back here and ready to go at 1. The boat's enclosed, and so it might rain tomorrow, I guess. I haven't looked at the forecast here lately, but it might get a little bit of rain, but the boat is enclosed, so unless you go out on the deck, you know, it's raining, you shouldn't get wet. But bring appropriate clothing for either being inside or outside the boat. And it's a 3-hour tour.
Don't plan. That's what they all say.
So we'll be back at 4 o'clock. I know there's some folks catching flight 67 going north to Anchorage tomorrow evening at 7-ish. So we'll be back in plenty of time for that. There was a big pot of gray whales hanging around. I think they're still around, like hundreds of them. So chances are we'll be able to see those. I think we're gonna go up Nakosina, Catlean, and then out towards Low Island, Shoal Lake. So we will get a chance to see some of the early harvest, around Sitka here. It blends in fairly well now. We can talk a little bit about some of that if people would like, and then we'll go see what we can see on the water. So any questions regarding the field trip that people might have that we haven't covered?
We gotta get everything out of the room after this, is that right?
Yes, so this room is, we don't have this room tonight, so yeah, we need clear things out. Oh, and the Foresters Fund raffle, so we'll be drawing names, right? Susan or Beth, yeah, we're gonna be drawing names
Take all the stuff over.
over,
Yeah.
we can round up some folks to help with that, but we're gonna be drawing names at the banquet. Yeah.
If you wanna buy any more using the credit card, you gotta do it before I leave. Because I'm not going over there.
And then I just wanna, just while we're all here, still just extend a big thank you to the Sitka Chapter Planning Committee. As well as Jeremy, Roger Burnside, Sue and Beth and others that have helped us with developing the agenda and the program, the Foresters Fund raffle. We wouldn't have had that without Susan and Beth's help, so. Just. All right, with that, I'm gonna hang up the mic and we'll see everyone at 5.
What time tonight?